Pope Leo XIV recently said Europe should strengthen the role of family in society and reinforce the fundamental dignity of all persons. The Holy Father made the remarks in a meeting with a group from the European Parliament. Pope Leo also says he is disappointed by a rejection of Christian values in European institutions, adding that some European countries consider abortion among their so-called family-friendly policies. In his remarks, the Holy Father said in part, quote, "We are not infrequently faced with the contradictory claims of purportedly family-friendly policies, which simultaneously promote discrimination against motherhood, exalt abortion as a right, and undermine the very foundation of the desire to start a family." For more, we turn to Dr. Joseph Meaney, past president and senior ethicist at the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Dr. Meaney, to start, what stood out most to you about the Holy Father's message to lawmakers in the European Parliament?
So I thought Pope Leo did a very good job in putting together two things that are not spoken of at the same time very often, which is the demographic decline of Europe and also discrimination against Christian values, Christian virtues. I think he made a very good point, which is that, as Europe has been de-Christianized, it's also lost fertility. It's lost the ability to have large families and children. And the church's message about the dignity of the family is intimately tied to the demographic problems that are a big issue right now for Europe.
Yeah. Can you put the message into context for us? What are the demographics showing in Europe, and how widespread is abortion and euthanasia?
Yeah, so Europe right now, the European Union has a total fertility rate on average of 1.34. So that's less than 2 children per woman in Europe. And just to maintain the population stable, they have to have 2.1, a TFR, total fertility rate. So what that means essentially is that Europe without immigrants would be losing population. And as it is, even with a massive immigration going on, the population is declining and also getting older. So that touches a lot into the euthanasia question, because right now, the average European is over 44 years old. And we're going towards a situation where in countries like Italy, the average person is going to be almost at retirement age. And so how do the pensions work? How does society work if you have a kind of a geriatric society? In some countries, they call it the gray tsunami. But it's a wonderful thing that people are living older. But the problem is that since there's so few children being born, you have this inverted pyramid. Normally, there's a pyramid, demographic pyramid, where there's the point at the top, which is the elderly that are being supported by the wide base at the bottom, which is all the children and the people working. But now it's being turned upside down, with more people in the elderly ages than in the young ages. And so that is a huge challenge for any country, but in particular for Europe and for East Asia.
And how often does a faith leader address a group from the European Parliament?
That's a good question. I know that there are frequently trips to Rome, but this seemed to be like a very specially seeking out the Holy Father's wisdom, right? It was the intergroup of the European Union on demography. And they had different leaders from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, different European institutions, and they were very clearly interested in the church's wisdom, which is wonderful. And I was very glad to see that, and hopefully they'll take his message to heart.
I hope so too, and I think we've been seeing that trend even with the AI encyclical. Now, what, if anything, do you think will come from the Holy Father's words?
Yeah, so I think it's very important. One of the things that he mentioned was that, some countries claim to have a family-friendly policy. They claim to be promoting births, promoting family, and at the very same time, they're promoting abortion as a fundamental right. They're promoting euthanasia. They're promoting, discrimination against motherhood and women who choose to stay at home and raise their children. So all those different things the Holy Father pointed out are contradictions. And because these countries really need to see that if they really want to have a pro-family, pro-birth policy, they have to, go against abortion. They have to go against all the culture of death.
Now, earlier you mentioned how a lot of these countries did have Christian roots that have been forgotten, but we're also seeing some reports that there has been a Christian revival in many European countries and in the church. What do you think, what do you hope will shake out there?
Yeah, it's very interesting to see that this past Easter, there were so many more people baptized than average, right? So it was really a high point in the United Kingdom and France and Germany, all these different countries in Europe, which is a great sign of hope, right? That young people are looking for values. They're looking for the church as kind of a pillar of truth and love and faith. And so that's a very beautiful thing. Hopefully those trends will continue, because certainly Europe has had a real de-Christianization where fewer and fewer people being baptized, going to church, just having Christianity as like the guiding force in their lives. It used to be that Europe was the center of Christianity. Now the center of Christianity has moved towards Africa, towards Latin America, and even towards the United States. There are many more Christians now outside of Europe than inside of Europe, which is a unique situation in the history of the world. So hopefully there will be a real renaissance, right? A new springtime is what the Holy Father called for. Just as St. John Paul II had talked about the new springtime of evangelization, but there's a desperate need for a new springtime in Europe.
Amen. And Dr. Meaney, before we let you go, are there any other pro-life news stories that you're following?
Yes, so it's been good to see that the French Senate has been rejecting the legalization of euthanasia in France. So they have a situation where their House has been passing the euthanasia law and the Senate has been rejecting it. And hopefully the Senate will win out on that. But it is so important, right, that euthanasia not be accepted, because there are already several countries in Europe that do accept it. And the UK rejected the legalization of euthanasia, which is great, and it could be that France would reject it as well. It would be a real kind of testimony to a resurgence in believing in the value of life at the end of life as well as at the beginning.
Amen. And we'll be praying for that. Well, Dr. Meaney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.